Hello and welcome to all the men and women of the West. I'm Joe here with me, my co-host Dan.
Hello and greetings.
And today I found an older article that I thought was pretty funny and interesting to read, as it's going to take me another week to finish editing the Arvid Nelson essay video we have planned, because that ends the graphic novel Shadow Kingdom section of the podcast, which hopefully that means the Shadow Kingdom podcast is over. So our 800th sub celebration for Conan fans will be at an end at long last. No offense, I'm kind of tired of Call right now. I'd rather read more Conan.
Yeah, we like Call. It's just we need a bit of a
Change of pace. Yeah, and in a few weeks we'll hopefully be releasing a Conan 24 comic book issue video and Dark Horse issue 1 comic book video. Maybe after that we'll release a Savage Sword of Conan review. We're just going to get into some of the comics more to compare, analyze, and just discuss, because they are very, very interesting. And there are some pretty good comic book runs of Conan out there. Now, Jason Momoa wanted Gail Simone to write a treatment for a Conan and Red Sonja crossover movie, which itself is not the worst idea out there. Now, you had Momoa, and you had Rose McGowan. Now, her licking the sword cannot be hygienic.
Nope.
Comic book writer Gail Simone, Red Sonja, Deadpool, Birds of Prey, Wonder Woman, Domino, has taken to Twitter to reveal that Conan the Barbarian actor Jason Momoa once wanted her to write a treatment for a potential crossover film featuring Conan and Red Sonja. The project never actually written, but seemed kind of interesting since there were plans for a new Red Sonja film before the Conan reboot was released, which I think to an extent could have worked. That said, I don't know if Gail Simone would have been my choice to write it. Probably not. Honestly, I never really found a single run of hers I really liked. I actually agree with some of her complaints about the whole woman in the refrigerator thing to an extent. Just in that, okay, we have a female character or love interest, or even a male love interest at times. It's like, we're just going to off them just for character development, even though there were still arcs we could have used character for or developed the character with. There were some characters you couldn't continue to use. Ironically, the woman in the refrigerator, the literal one, Kyle Rayner's love interest, who is used to just give him character development and shock and awe and whatnot. That's how she was slain. There was nothing more you could do with the character. She had actually outlived her rightful lifespan to an extent as a character.
And had that not happened, Kyle's character progression would have ground down to a halt, and he would have been just another Connor Hawk.
Yeah. That said, on the other hand, there are characters where they got rid of a female character for no reason. Actually, I hate... For example, Tony Stark's one Japanese love interest, Rumiko. Why get rid of her? She was the best character in Iron Man at the time. Hey, except for maybe War Machine. I love War Machine. I'm obsessed with him. But I'm a big Iron Man fan, and I hated how they got rid of Rumiko. I don't even like Pepper Potts being with Tony in the movies. I think they should have brought in Rumiko. She's the best love interest Tony Stark ever had, and they got rid of her for no reason. Like, things like that. I get why Simone kind of freaked out back in the day about this, because it was getting to be a bit of a problem. Now, I do agree with getting rid of Kyle's love interest, but every other love interest at the time, I was like, why? Heck, Identity Crisis, for example, where they corrupted the Atom's love interest when she was actually a good character before that, and then got rid of her. No, they should never have corrupted her. They should have corrupted Sue Dibney because nobody was using her. Sue Dibney had no arc. Why not use her as a corrupted villain?
Elongated Man was always a character in the background, an extra.
Well, because he hadn't been relevant for 25 years. Anyways, that's us debating comic books. But the main thing here is I don't think I would want Gail Simone to write Red Sonja or a crossover movie between Conan and Red Sonja. Honestly, we had just been discussing this, but I think Louise Simonson to helm things with Walter maybe kind of just accompanying her, just to help her out a little. and act as a writing assistant to her because they've been each other's assistants and editors a few times. I think Louise Simonson, if you get her in the right mood, she could write a great story. Like, look at Death of Superman. That was pretty much her. Yeah, there were other writers, but if you pay attention to the interviews, she did a lot of the legwork, and she was brilliant. You look at her Power Pack saga. I'll argue she's more brilliant than her husband. Like, I think Louise Simonson would demur and say her husband's better, but I think she's better than her husband.
And that's saying quite a bit because...
And Walter Simonson's really good.
Yeah, he had the only real successful Thor run.
Yeah. Walter Simonson has had other successful runs, but Louise Simonson would be my first pick. Or Devin Grayson.
Yeah.
Devin Grayson's pretty good as a writer. Like, there's a lot of great female comic book writers I think that could do it, but I don't know about Gail Simone. Now, if you disagree and you actually like Gail Simone, that's fine. Keep liking her. It's just she's not our cup of tea. At the time, Rose was attached to the Red Sonja reboot with Robert Rodriguez. He's a brilliant director. Remember his From Dusk Till Dawn? The first season was the best. I don't like the later ones because I found they went on for too long.
Mm-hmm. And I think he'd be able to bring something great.
Oh, yeah. He's worked with Quentin Tarantino, and I actually prefer Rodriguez to Tarantino.
Not to mention, he has a grasp of the mood of how Hyboria would be.
Yeah, although he might interject probably a bit of I think, Spanish into it, because he often brings the Spanish language into his projects, which, sure. Okay, no, like, he could use that for Zamora, or whatever, or something. Like, I could see it being pulled off. Like, brilliant director. He's one of my favorites. The project had been promoted at San Diego Comic-Con 2008 with mock-up poster and teaser images. Why mock it up? Do it for reals. She had recently worked with Robert on his Grindhouse installment, Planet Terror. No, just on his. You see that? Typo. It played in theaters as a double feature with Quentin Tarantino's Death Proof. Yeah, because Tarantino and Rodriguez are really good chums. Yeah, we're going to skip forward a little. Let's check her post. Jason Momoa wanted me to write. Okay, so it's basically a repetition of what happened before. Nothing came of it, but it would have been a blast to do. Why did nothing come of it? He pitched me the whole idea while we were riding in a van through a city in New Zealand. Can't remember which. I wonder which city that was. He's just a very enthusiastic, lovely guy, and I liked him immediately. Okay. Well, you should have probably worked on it. That could have helped your career. I think it's because it was Red Sonja and Conan. She never struck me as very enthusiastic for those characters because, I'm going to be honest, Gail Simone's more into superheroes. She doesn't strike me as being particularly into the Hyborian age, which is probably for the best because I've heard bad things about her Red Sonja run. And I'm not terribly curious about that one. I'm currently enjoying Savage Sword and Dark Horse Comics run of Conan. So, yeah. And I just got started on those. And I'm really enjoying them. They're not as good as Howard's work, because it's Howard, but they're still really good. Conan the Barbarian didn't connect with audiences. Yeah, the 2011 movie doesn't seem to have stuck. I've never seen it, though. We're going to be watching it at some point for a review. So there was never sequel made? What? So there was never a sequel made. Gosh, the grammar.
Where was the editor?
Yeah, I know. Okay, who wrote this? Seriously. Oh, can't find it.
From...
who cares? Christopher Mark, work on your grammar, dude. Now, still, at least the main article does have some interesting news. So there was never a sequel made, and Jason Momoa eventually landed his supporting part as Khal Drogo on HBO's hit fantasy series Game of Thrones. Yeah, I wasn't terribly impressed with his portrayal of the character, to be quite honest. But physically, he looked the part from the book, so that's all you really needed. Khal Drogo was not a particularly important character. I mean, no offense to Game of Thrones fans, it's just He was not a Stark or a Lannister or a Targaryen. They were the important characters. And maybe the Baratheons. Everyone else is basically an extra, to my mind, to an extent. I'm kind of wrong as well, to an extent. That's a gross oversimplification, but for the most part, those are the important characters. Everyone else is an extra. That success on television led to him landing the Aquaman role in Warner Brothers' DC Comics franchise. You know what? I think Momoa should have either been cast as Namor over in Marvel, or with Aquaman, he should have gotten better dialogue. Because, and maybe in the Justice League movie, better writing because the writing in that movie. But that said, him as Aquaman, I've not seen Aquaman. I'm not terribly curious about superhero movies at this point. I was tired by 2010 of superhero movies.
Yeah.
And so that by 2013, I was basically calling it quits. Just because there were too many.
Even if the image of Jason Momoa talking arrogantly like Namor, the Scion of Atlantis,
would be pretty cool.
Would be pretty cool.
Although it'd be the first time Namor's portrayed with a beard. Which would be neat.
Yeah.
No, because I know like most of his depictions after the Conan movie were with him with a beard. Hey, it'd be a different image for Namor. If you guys disagree with me, go ahead. I more than encourage it. I'm not the biggest comic book guy. I don't really read too many for that matter anymore. More recently, Netflix has acquired the rights to Robert E. Howard's Conan, allowing them to make films, television shows, and animated projects. Except they're not doing anything with it. And this was in 2021. And
Nothing.
I think the rights have returned to the company. Who owns them? Rodriguez's incarnation of Red Sonja never actually came together, darn, as the filmmaker instead pivoted to producing 20th Century Fox's Predators. I don't know how good those were. I haven't seen them. Maybe we should watch them for the horror channel.
Maybe.
And other subsequent things, like taking over directorial duties on James Cameron's Alita Battle Angel. Oh, I didn't know he was involved in that. Shows how I've not been paying attention to Hollywood stuff since about 2008. I don't keep track. A newer version of Red Sonja had Millennium Films hire disgraced X-Men franchise director Bryan Singer, before he was ultimately replaced with Transparent's Jill Soloway, who, in the summer of 2019... What's Transparent? It's a popular film? However, it's been a couple of years since Jill's announcement and unclear if it will ever get made. Okay. I honestly don't know what to make of a lot of those revelations of who would have gotten it or not. I think they should go back to Rodriguez. I love him as a director. He's great. And you know what? He's more horror, but he could... The thing about okay, by this time it's public knowledge, I didn't exactly approve of Jackson being given the helm for Tolkien, but given Jackson's horror roots previous to the Lord of the Rings movie, at the time I probably would have said, back in 2001, maybe Conan. Because Conan has, to an extent, a more closely related relationship, directly related relationship to an extent, at least to the public mind, with horror. Although there's plenty of horror in Tolkien's Lord of the Rings, don't get me wrong. And actually the horror side of Lord of the Rings movies was pretty good. When those scenes were required, Jackson delivered. Let's give the man his due respect. But I think the difference is Rodriguez would bring the necessary horror gumption, so to speak, to Red Sonja. And I think Red Sonja, this would be a more serious portrayal in a way. And the thing about Red Sonja is that having read a bit more of Savage Sword and the Conan the Barbarian comics, so that I now actually know the character. Before I didn't. A crossover between her and Conan wouldn't be so bad, though. She essentially in a Red Sonja standalone, she probably wouldn't have a love interest. Good. No, like what I find brought down some Wonder Woman portrayals was Steve Trevor. I don't really like Steve Trevor as a character. I don't know who I'd pair Wonder Woman with, honestly. So maybe don't listen to me. But Red Sonja is someone who, let's be honest, she's one of Conan's girlfriends in the comics. And I don't say that to knock her. Like, Valeria and Baelit are great characters. But Red Sonja is kind of one of his girlfriends from his youth. So such a crossover would be pretty good. And there would be a certain kind of tension between Conan and Red Sonja that would be necessary. I don't know if I'd cast Jason Momoa as Conan, though. He looks the part to an extent. He does. Like,
Yeah.
but I think that I'd prefer, I don't know, Henry Cavill or something. I don't know. World of Conan would have a better idea of who to cast. He's more familiar with actors across the world and whatnot. Red Sonja, Rose McGowan. Well, in the poster art, she looks the part. Okay, I guess. Sonja. Yeah, but I would actually give as a condition maybe not have a love interest for the Conan movie, standalone movie that would precede a Conan Red Sonja crossover movie, just to build up his character. Because maybe you could do the Tower of the Elephant, or like, you know, as a standalone movie, or like, I know we all want Red Nails, but maybe Red Nails should be like Conan movie 2 and spin off into a Valeria movie or TV series. Valeria and the Red Brotherhood or something.
That would be something interesting, and it would be an original take on a very popular Conan character.
Yeah, and for Conan, I'm just saying maybe just a standalone for the first movie. Or even, I don't know, get into the Black Colossus or something, or well, either way, but maybe, yeah, like, if they would do either a TV series or a movie, maybe after this Valeria Red Nails movie, maybe do Phoenix on the Sword or something. I would argue Hour of the Dragon should be a full TV series. But if it's going to be a movie, it should be a 14 to 16 hour film. Like the Lord of the Rings expanded edition, I think it is, was. The reason I'm arguing for such length is just there's so much detail. And I would actually argue in favor of giving Robert Rodriguez the helm and giving him a blank check to do what he wants and to do everything he can and cram it full of Conan.
I agree. Robert Rodriguez over Gail Simone.
Well, no, he'd be the director. I'd want Louis Simonson on writing duties for almost this entire set of movies.
Yeah. Okay. Right. But I don't want her as a writer. In fact,
Gail Simone, you mean?
Gail Simone, I don't want her anywhere near a typewriter. There is always trouble that her characters end up like.
Well, yeah. The thing with Red Sonja, I'm gonna agree. Like, I'm not a big Gail Simone fan either. I think that Red Sonja would benefit from Louis Simonson. Heck, if you have to separate the Simonsons, maybe he writes Conan.
Yeah.
They write separately, then they come together for the crossover movie. But I think that she should be the main writer for the crossover, because Louis Simonson is probably one of my top 5 favorite comic book writers. And you have Robert Rodriguez with them. Now, the two of them are not entirely familiar with horror. And I know there was X-Men Inferno, but that one was that was
a disaster.
Yeah, and I think that Louis Simonson deserves a second chance with horror / dark fantasy. And because she is talented. And I genuinely think she's more talented than her husband. But you bring in Walter to help with maybe do a full Conan movie on his own. Just give him a chance, because he deserves one. He is talented. And you give them the power, unlimited power over the crossover alongside Robert Rodriguez, who himself is a talented writer. And you get the three of them, you basically lock them in a room and say, all right, you guys are going to come up with Conan, the Barbarian movie. You're going to come up with Red Sonja, the crossover. Then you're going to come up with Conan the Cimmerian, or Conan Red Nails or something. Red Sonja 2. Hey, give her a second movie. Why not? And then a King Conan movie, which would basically be something akin to an expanded version of Phoenix on the Sword. Heck, you could even make that Phoenix on the Sword type story a bit of a crossover with Red Sonja. And then you basically tell them, all right, now that you have that out of the way, Louise and Walter are going to go off maybe with a different director to do Valyria and the Red Brotherhood as its own series, as a story between Conan 2 / Red Sonja 2 and King Conan. Because, there would be like a 10 to 15 year difference in universe. And you have maybe the Valyria and the Red Brotherhood, or just Valyria, be a story which is directed by okay, part of me just wants to say George Lucas just because I like Lucas, but he's retired and he wouldn't do such a project. Let's think of one director. Let's see.
I don't know my directors.
Neither do I. Mostly I've paid attention to Robert Rodriguez, and that's almost it. That's the sad thing. But the only reason I'd be worried about him overworking is because I want him on a Hour of the Dragon epic movie.
That's fair.
Yeah, and Peter Jackson is someone whom I'm not sure about some of his take on action scenes because they tend to be a little over the top for my taste. And this is tricky. Maybe World of Conan could come up with someone. Well, part of me would want to say Christopher Nolan, but Nolan would never agree to such a project. So, it would probably be... there's always a possibility of someone like Sam Raimi, who did a lot of Hercules stuff and Evil Dead, but he tends to have he tries to interject his sense of humor too much sometimes, and I don't want Valeria's series to be too funny. I want it to be fun, but action-packed and dark.
That's fair.
Not funny.
And it's a pity.
Maybe a Japanese director would be the best option, or a Korean director.
Maybe.
They're pretty good, because they have a good eye for set design and mood and themes and whatnot, so maybe one of them.
And it's a pity. I would have loved to see Lucas or Nolan's take on Hyboria.
Yeah, same. I don't think they'd be terribly interested. So, yeah, Robert Rodriguez as the main showrunner or kind of main visionary. Like, the guy in charge of Hyboria, a Hyborian set of TV series and movies, would be pretty good, with Louis Simonson and Walter Simonson to back him up. And to provide a bit of a more writer-focused side to things, because the two have written some of the best runs of comic books out there. So tell us what you think of this idea, and don't forget to smash that like and that subscribe button, as though you were Conan smashing his enemies to itty-bitty